Good morning. Today is the 21st day of Tammuz, the 10th of July, and we're up to the second reading of Matot-Massei. And like I said yesterday, this is a very, very long section about the war with Midian. And there's so much to say about this war, so many halachot that came out of it, and it's impossible not to address the I think what may be easily termed the elephant in the room, which is that this sounds like one of the worst episodes in the Torah, and especially that God describes it in Numbers 31:1. God spoke to Moses saying, "Take revenge for the Israelites against the Midianites. Afterwards you will die and be gathered to your people." This idea that this is a war of revenge, and that is very hard, especially for the Western disposition to accept that there is such a thing, that God would command such a thing. So instead of tackling it that way, I want to first of all address this issue from a different point of view, which is that we have to remember that this is in a time when there is a Moses, someone who is constantly in contact with the infinite, with God, and has pure, clear prophecy. And so we can learn from that is probably the only time that it's possible to take revenge. Meaning that to be able to do something like this, you have to be able to be in such a clear connection with the Almighty that it was only possible at that time, in that place. And that in general, this is not something that can be done. So I think that that's the way to look at this regarding that issue. But I want to get into if that was what we call a hora'at sha'ah. Hora'at sha'ah means that it's an ad hoc commandment. This is not a commandment that exists for all time. If there were Midianites that remained, there was no commandment to destroy them. Can't forget the fact that the Midianites are the people of Jethro. And that in itself is a question. By the way, we find Midianites throughout the rest of the Bible, so obviously this was a particular clan or tribe out of the Midianites, and the Midianites continued to harass and kill Jews throughout the Bible. In any case, since this is an ad hoc commandment and it's never repeated again, it can never be repeated again, so the question becomes, what do you learn from this? What do we take from it for posterity? What do we do with it today? And you may have heard that one of the most important treatises written in Chassidut is named after this the second verse describing the war. We're talking about Numbers 31:3. And God spoke to Moses. Moses spoke to the people, saying, "Arm from among you righteous men for the army." So he uses here the word arm, but really means bring out. And bring out in the sense that they should leave everything they're doing, and this should be the thing that they should be dedicated to. The word in Hebrew is hechaltzu. And this word in and of itself is very interesting, but it became the title of one of the most important treatises in all of Hasidic thought, which is called, I'm holding it here, it's called Hechaltzu, Tafresh Nun Tet. It was written by the 5th Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he takes the whole story into a completely different context. Again, because it is an ad hoc commandment, never repeated again. You can't base anything on it, except for a number of the laws that were taught at the end regarding the kashrus, the kosher status of vessels, utensils that were taken from non-Jews. What does he do with it? So he says the word Midian, the name Midian in Hebrew literally comes from the word to contest, madon. to be angry at someone, to contest them, to oppose them. And the fifth Rebbe, he asks a simple question: why is it so necessary to have this much anger and take revenge against these Midianites? And against, we're not talking about the people don't exist anymore. So what does this mean for us? What are we taking revenge against? And maybe more importantly, why is this tied into Moses' demise? Why does God say to him, afterwards you will pass away, after you finish this war? The Rebbe explained that the root of this nation, what they represent in our psychology, and by the way, this is true of all the nations that appear in the Torah, nations that don't exist anymore. Sort of like, maybe I should say a few words about this. When a species or a nation disappears from the world, historically nations have disappeared, species have become extinct. So there is no such thing that they don't leave an impression, even if they're gone. And the understanding in Hasidic thought is that all these episodes of extinction of species and the demise of civilizations or nations builds up the human psyche. In other words, that whatever they represented becomes part of who we are, except that their extinction or their demise signifies that they've given reality what they can. Now, in the case of nations like Midian, who were obviously not good, they were very negative. So what they've taught us is a lesson in the dangers of this type of behavior. And so the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe takes this and he says, and he analyzes, what does it mean to just be contestful, to be against someone, to oppose someone? And now he adds a very important word, not because he ever did anything to me, but just because he exists. Where does that come from? And in a certain sense, that is exactly what happened with Midian and Moab that we read in Parshat Balak, that they came and wanted, the Jewish people didn't know anything about this. We said back then that Moses received this prophecy directly from God. He was not privileged to be there. He didn't hear anything about this. God just gave him the prophecy telling him what had happened behind the scenes with Bilam and Balak and their attempt to destroy the Jewish people. And then the second attempt was with the daughters of Midian. So when you have that type of opposition, which is opposed to you without you ever having done anything, and this was true because there was a command from God not to do anything to Moab, because Moab was considered to be, first of all, they are relations of the Jewish people. They are the children of Lot, Abraham's nephew. And God even says, why do I not want you to make war with them? Because they're going to bring out, King David is going to come from Moab. Naamah Ammonit, who was the mother of the continuation of Solomon, came from the other daughter of Lot, the Ammonites. So he says, you can't attack them, and I won't give you from their land anything. And so there was no contest, there was no opposition, there was no reason for what Balak did. And yet he did it anyway. And so the root of that type of opposition, says the Lubavitcher Rebbe, is a feeling of self-aggrandizement, what we call yeshut, a feeling of self, a feeling that I'm important and someone else isn't. And the way he describes it is very graphic. It's as if you're sitting in a room, and just the fact that someone walks in already bothers you. Why is it bothering you? What's going on? He says that is the root of this feeling of self-aggrandizement, that I am more important, better, so on. And in a sense, he calls it the extension of the self. That I take up all this room. How dare you impose upon my space? that feeling that somehow the world is mine, you could, in a negative sense, you could maybe connect it with a phrase that's used a lot: the world is your oyster. The world is not your oyster. It doesn't belong to you. The world belongs to God. And you're a guest for so many years. And so the feeling that somehow I'm supposed to be the master of everything that I survey, the space is mine, he says that's where this opposition, this madon, Midian, comes from. It's a terrible, and he says that this is the opposite of what we mean to love another Jew. To love another Jew means exactly the opposite. That I belittle myself, that I don't need any room. That, for instance, the Rebbe once gave an example of this when there were refugees that came out of different places in Russia, and they ended up on their doorstep. He said, so we slept in a smaller space for 3 months until they found a way either to get back to where they were from, or they found a different place to stay. The whole feeling is one of that I can belittle myself, I can make myself small. That is the essence of loving one's fellow. That is the essence of connecting to other people. But when there's this feeling of opposition right away, that just the very fact that the other person exists, it causes me pain. I can't stand it. I feel like I'm scrunched. I feel like I have no room. Says that is the root of this feeling in the psyche. And that you have to take revenge against. He says that you have to destroy. That is actually the revenge of what it means that God is asking you to take revenge against it. Because God means unity. Havaya, the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, it stands for the unity of the world. That everything underneath is really one. And so where do I get this idea that my extension is somehow more important than someone else's? So this is a tremendous task that he says that the leader of every generation, starting from Moses, wants to see completed before he passes away. In other words, he's saying that from Moses and on, the goal of every leader of the Jewish people has been to reach the state of love of one's fellow, which battles and takes revenge against this feeling of madon, this feeling of contesting, this feeling of not having enough room when somebody else is here. That feeling is what they want to eradicate. That's what they want to take revenge against. And that's how they dedicate their lives, so that if they've achieved that, or they want to see that achievement in their lifetime, once they've achieved that, they feel that they can part from the world. Now, in our generation, it's almost impossible to ignore what's going on now in Israel. Maybe you're not feeling it so much there, or not aware of it so much. There is a Midian in the world. There is a nation like this today in the world, obviously not a nation. The media, you can't even escape the connection between the words. The idea of media and Midian, they're almost the same word. The media sows anger and hatred and strife and everything that is negative in the world, and they cause people to hate one another even though there's no reason at all. And the way that we're feeling it now in the land of Israel is that there is a certain reform that they want to do in the justice system, and everybody who was in the opposition before was for that reform. They wanted to do it themselves, but now that they're on the other side of the aisle, so they're completely against it, and they're willing to burn the country down. To do what? Not to stop the reform. They don't really care about the reform. What they care about is to create enough hatred so that the people rise up in some way and throw down the elected government or something like that. That they can't do. That there's 50 people like that who want to inherit their predecessors' places in the parliament. But they can't do this without the media. And the media, that's what it does. That's how it makes its money, apparently. That's what it lives off of. And so anybody that I speak to, the greatest revenge today is not to listen to the media. The media is all hatred. It's all full of hatred for other people. It doesn't matter from which side to what side. I'm saying that for me it's very hard to escape the connection between this word Midian and the word media, the modern word that we have for this. It doesn't have to be this way. The media could become something which is exactly the opposite. It could be the way to bring peace and love and kindness to people. But unfortunately, they've chosen that side to make their money off of getting people angry at others without any reason at all. And so let's end today, and hopefully we'll hear good things. And if I can give anyone any advice, don't connect to the media, but live off of the Word of God, live off of the Torah, live off of friendship with the people that you know. These things are real, these things have permanence, they build life and they don't destroy it. Thank you very much for joining, and I hope to see everyone tomorrow at the same time.